What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and today I am pleased to announce that geomag stabilizers are officially back. Back in the day, I absolutely loved these things. I still remember when they dropped for me in Forsaken, and back then I was a pretty big noob at the game. I didn't really watch much Destiny YouTube or follow things on Twitter or Reddit, so when they dropped for me, I hadn't even heard of how good they are. Back then, I'd unlocked Middle Tree Arc first because I just loved how the Kamehameha Chaos Reach super looked. And from that moment, I was hooked. In Season of the Seraph, I made a Warmind build that destroyed in Gambit, and I was second in the world in Elo that season because my clanmates and I would destroy the Primevals with a bunch of Geomag Warlocks. We had like a 40 game winning streak. I took it into GMs and abused Energy Converter to get 50% of my super back, and then I would sprint to top off Chaos Reach like Geomags used to do before they were nerfed. Needless to say, they are one of my favorite exotics in Destiny. And then they got hit with a nerf, and truthfully, I haven't played with them since. But Bungie recently reworked them, so let's see what they do now. They have the intrinsic perk Close Enough. Damaging targets with Chaos Reach extends its duration. Collecting Ionic Traces grants you energy for Chaos Reach. So this is the recent change. As I said, you used to be able to sprint around to top off your super, now they get super energy from Ionic Traces, where normally you only get ability energy. The Destiny Data Compendium states that Ionic Traces grant you 12.5% grenade and melee energy, and 15% class ability. So in this video, I'm going to show two versions of this build. One is more intended for Grandmaster content such as this week's Nightfall where this absolutely shines, and one for lower end content where you are even more of a glass cannon. You can get tons of supers, but at the cost of a bit of survivability. I tested both variants in the new Europa Battlegrounds GM, and both are excellent. If you know how to stay alive in hard content, then you may not need the extra damage resistance. So let's jump in. Obviously we have the Chaos Reach super, and for aspects we have Arc Soul and Electrostatic Mind. Arc Souls grant you and allies Arc Souls from passing through your Rift. I choose to run Healing Rift, but in lower end content you could also run Empowering, though I definitely prefer Healing. Your Arc Soul also gets supercharged and fires at a faster rate when you are amplified. And for the next aspect we have Electrostatic Mind. Defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an Ionic Trace, and collecting an Ionic Trace makes you amplified. So with this build, you can make a ton of Ionic Traces. For Fragments, I will give you 2 that you must run, and then give you 4 more options that you can flex in and out depending on the content that you're running. So the first must-have is Spark of Shock. Your arc grenades jolt targets. Jolt is absolutely amazing in ad-dense activities as it tags a bunch of enemies with damage, and then defeating jolted targets will grant us an Ionic Trace which gives us ability energy as I mentioned, as well as super energy thanks to Geomags. And it makes us amplified to supercharge our Arc Soul, as well as give us other benefits. The other fragment you really need to run is Spark of Recharge. While critically wounded, your melee energy and grenade energy regenerate more quickly. This is a 400% increase to our base recharge rate. I believe base recharge rate means the base as of tier 3, which is 2 minutes and 1 second. So that means it should go down to a 24-second cooldown. And in my testing, that is pretty accurate. I get my grenade back in 20 seconds. Spark of Recharge makes it 24 seconds, and my 100 discipline stat makes my passive recharge faster, so I get it back in 20. That is insane uptime given how strong pulse grenades are. This also buffs your melee energy the same way. I run Ball Lightning, and though this melee isn't super great, it's nice that it reduces the cooldown. And the melee can give some other benefits that I will get into later. So Spark of Shock and Spark of Recharge are must-haves in my opinion. And now for the other two. I typically run Pulse Grenades because they have great single target damage and good ad clear. So I run Spark of Magnitude, which increases the duration of my Pulse Grenades. This gives it an additional 2 pulses for a total of 8. And for the last fragment, I run Spark of Resistance. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. This is a 25% damage resistance that procs when you have 3 enemies within 15 meters of you. It also lingers for 2 seconds. So that is one version of the build for higher end content thanks to the damage resistance. But here is another version that is just as good. You actually get more super uptime with this one, but I have to play a little more carefully. So again, we have Spark of Magnitude for jolt grenades and Spark of Recharge for ability energy. So first, we substitute Spark of Resistance for Spark of Amplitude. Rapidly defeating targets while you are amplified creates an Orb of Power. Orbs will obviously feed into our super energy as well as give us armor charge. This can work in conjunction with Arc Siphon, allowing you to spawn in 2 orbs with 1 kill. You can see in the background gameplay, I spawn in 2 orbs multiple times and get a super in about a minute. I'm only running 40 Intellect, which is a 7 minute 11 second super cooldown. And this isn't even an ad-rich environment. You can get a super much more quickly with high ad density activities. And then we can substitute in Spark of Discharge in place of Magnitude. This states arc weapon final blows have a chance to create an ionic trace. So this gives us even more opportunities to create ionic traces and is a backup in the rare instance that you are not amplified. So mix and match these as you see fit. Electrostatic Mine can also proc from blinded target defeats, so flashbang grenades could be great to run as they have a 1 minute 31 second base cooldown, which is only 45 seconds with 100 discipline. They're also great for this week's GM as the ads can be quite threatening, but when they are blinded, they don't attack you. So now let's move on to mods. Starting with the helmet, we can feed further into our super energy. We have on Ashes to Assets to get super energy from grenade kills. If you are running flashbangs, they are more utility and don't get much for kills, so maybe don't run Ashes to Assets, but with pulse grenades, they can get a ton of kills, so this mod is great for super energy. We then have Harmonic Siphon to get orbs from arc weapon multi-kills, and then Font of Wisdom to give us 3 tiers of intellect when we have armor charge. This takes our intellect from 40 to 70, resulting in about a 1 minute decrease on our passive cooldown. On the gloves, we have Firepower to create an orb of power when we get a grenade kill. We also have Bolstering Detonation and Momentum Transfer to give us class ability energy and melee energy when we deal damage with a grenade. On the chest, in lower end content, I recommend a Charged Up mod and Concussive Dampener, but in this week's GM, 1 Solar, 1 Void, and 1 Arc Resist mod is extremely good to run. On the boots, I go with 2 Arc Weapon Surge mods to boost our arc weapon damage by 17%. However, if you wanted to feed into your abilities even further, you could run Innervation, Invigoration, and Absolution. And finally, on the Bond, we have Double Bomber to give us a nice chunk of grenade energy whenever we cast a Rift, and then Font of Restoration to give us 3 tiers of recovery whenever we have armor charge, taking our recovery from 70 to 100, allowing us a faster Rift cooldown for survivability and to give our teammates Arc Souls, as well as quicker health regeneration. So I've talked about my stats a lot, so why not show them? As always, in PvE we run 100 Resilience for that 30% damage resistance. I then run 70 recovery, but this goes to 100 when I have armor charge thanks to Font of Restoration, and then 100 discipline because arc grenades are wonderful, and then 40 intellect which goes to 70 with our Font of Wisdom mod on our helmet. Mobility and strength do not really matter at all for this build. And keep in mind, you lose 10 discipline when you run Spark of Shock, but it is well worth it. So try for 100 Resil and 100 discipline, and then as high of recovery as you can get. And then intellect next. So we have covered the exotic, aspects, fragments, mods, and our stat distribution. So let's look at the seasonal artifact mods next, because this makes the build even better. And again, we can go a few different ways with this. So first and foremost, you want Arc Elemental Orbs. You'll be making lots of them thanks to the arc weapon kills you're getting, so why not? These orbs can then provide you with ability energy thanks to refreshing pickups, so even more ways of getting your abilities back quicker. Elemental Fury makes stunned champions take increased damage from your abilities and elemental orbs, so let's run that because then our melee, grenade, and chaos reach will all deal extra damage to a champion when it is stunned. And then, depending on our loadout, we can run Semi-Auto Striker to get armor charge if we are using a bow, sniper, or scout, and this feeds into our font mods and weapon surge mods. Then we have the final column, and here is where you can mix and match. For the Europa GM, I think you should go with Monochromatic Maestro and Elemental Embrace. Maestro will buff your arc weapon damage by 10% for dealing ability damage, and it will also make your arc abilities deal 10% more damage for dealing arc weapon damage. And this even works with Chaos Reach. So you can shoot an enemy with your arc weapon first, and then for 5 seconds your Chaos Reach will deal an additional 10% damage. Elemental Embrace gives you 50% damage resistance against incoming arc damage. So in the Europa Battleground specifically, there's a shitload of arc damage, from the wizards to the tracer shanks that snipe you, vandal rifles, etc. So for that GM in particular, this is great. It is only active when you are amplified, but you are amplified pretty much all the time. However, if you are a cracked gamer and good at staying alive, go with Rapid Fire Ranger instead. It can provide a 15% weaken effect to enemies that you shoot in the crit. So think of this, you can use an arc machine gun to weaken an enemy. This procs Monochromatic Maestro, which is a 10% buff, and then you cast Chaos Reach. So your already strong super is now hitting for 26.5% more damage. That is almost Thunderous Retort levels of damage. Also, can we make geomags get Thunderous Retort intrinsically? Right now, one and done supers are the super damage meta, so that buff to geomags would maybe make it worth running. Something to think about. Everyone tag the Bungie devs with this idea. I miss OP geomags. Anyways, Rapid Fire Ranger is awesome to run. When I was running the GM with my friends, I just made sure they had it on, and then they could debuff the enemies for me, and I could run Maestro for the damage and Embrace for the damage resistance. The Europa Battlegrounds GM has tons of heavy ammo crates, so ammo is never much of a concern. But in other content, if you want to keep your machine gun ammo up at all times, I recommend running Elemental Munitions. This allows you to create special and heavy ammo from elemental orbs. So you can get some machine gun kills, grab an orb, kill some enemies with it, get a heavy brick, and then keep mowing everything down with your machine gun. All while you are tossing out abilities like crazy as well. It is a super fun gameplay loop. So yeah, depending on the content you are running, you can run any combination of those 4. And now, let's wrap it up by looking at some weapon suggestions. Honestly, in the kinetic slot, you are almost throwing if you don't use Wish Ender, especially in this week's GM. Adds are often at a distance, and Wish Ender triple penetrates, which means it gives you massive super energy for every shot landed. And we are going for tons of supers with this build. But if you don't want to run that, run anything else that you like in the kinetic slot. Quicksilver Storm with Anti-Barrier Auto is a good alternative, but you do you. For energy weapons, Unstoppable Fusion is good, so you can run a Solar Fusion for the wizards if you want, or double down and run Arc Fusion rifles for the Arc shields. With Unstoppable Fusion on, the solar ones will still benefit from the Overcharge Weapons 25% buff. I tried running Delicate Tomb for a run, but for some reason, Unstoppable Fusion doesn't proc on it, so please report this issue to Bungie. But in content where you don't have champs, this thing could wreck, and its intrinsic perk allows it to make Ionic Traces. Centrifuge is also nice as it can blind targets if you are using it properly, but it does require you to be mobile, so it's not ideal for GMs where you want to play cover. In the heavy slot, please use an arc machine gun. It is amazing for ad clear, and there are a ton of good ones. The Swarm can roll with One for All, which is a huge damage buff. If you have an old 7th Seraph Saw, that can roll with Vorpal, which is nice for champs, even though Wish Ender does wreck champs. Terminus Horizon can get some nice rolls, and then we have my new favorite, Song of Ear Ute. This thing can get some absolutely cracked rolls. You can get Cascade Point, Target Lock, Bait and Switch, Sword Logic, and Volt Shot. Personally, I was using Volt Shot. Mine even has Feeding Frenzy, which works great for the increase in reload speed to proc Volt Shot. It is awesome in this ad dense GM because you can mow down some ads, reload quickly, and then shoot your Volt Shot at a high health target like a champion to jolt it. Then, as you and your teammates deal damage to that target, you can be damaging surrounding enemies as you do so. But all of the options I listed would be good. Arc machine guns are absolutely perfect with this build. You can use them for insane ad clear, and then on high health targets, go to town with your abilities and super. It is such a fun gameplay loop. Anyways, that is it for the video. I was so excited when I made this build, and it blew away my expectations. Geomag Chaos Reach felt really good in the GM, and it is a very safe super to use. Like, I could take out the Death Tongue Chorister from way up where you kill the unstoppable ogres. So it's really great for dealing big damage from a safe area. Not to mention the super itself is just cool as hell. I just love it so much, and I hope you love this build as much as I do. Also, can we please respect the drip on this outfit? I just love it. The dragon helmet is so sick. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, then please drop a like on it, and subscribe for more awesome and strong builds in the future. I have a ton of awesome ones cooked up, I just gotta get to making them into video form. And lastly, if you made it this far, then I thank you so much for watching. Enjoy destroying all kinds of content with this build, and take care.